And seeing no new members of the Democrat side of the aisle, we will continue on the Republican side with Mrs. Love of Utah for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a couple of questions. I'm new here, so you're going to have to help educate me on some of these things. Is it your goal to wind down the bank so that the private sector can participate in some of the export finance?
Our goal is to fill in gaps in the private sector. During the financial crisis, we were called to do more of that.
Did you ever talk about winding down the XM Bank?
No, I didn't talk about it.
Never in 2012, you never talked about getting to a point where you can wind down so that the private sector can take up more of the export financing?
Well, we step back when the private sector steps forward. That's why our loans are off by almost 50% from 2 years ago.
So you never talked about winding down the bank at all?
I guess I don't, maybe I don't fully understand the question then.
Oh, okay. Well, that's interesting because I have all sorts of memos here that talks about what you're required to do, what the reauthorization in 2012, how you got a broad support, and the things that you had promised that you were going to do. And one of the things that you talked about was one of the things that was discussed was winding down.
Well, the Treasury Department was called to do that if the bank is not reauthorized.
Okay, so I'm trying to figure out what the goals. How do you reach that goal so you're not in direct competition with our private sector here?
Exactly. We are brought in almost every single case by the private sector. A bank says to their customer, we cannot make this loan unless we get a guarantee. An insurance broker says, I can't find you private sector insurance. Let's go to the Export-Import Bank. So it is private sector insurance brokers, private sector banks that say, we need to guarantee a loan because we cannot make the loan on our books without a guarantee.
Okay, so do you have a set of steps, a set of stages, different things that you can actually give to this body for perusal on how you're going to get to the goal, get to that goal to allow some of the private sector to get into this?
Well, the private sector is in every one of those deals. So they bring us in. The private sector says, we need a guarantee in order to make the loan.
Do you have any goal at all to limit your footprint in this market?
Well,
or do you have a goal to expand it?
No, I tried to say our loan volume is running almost half what it was 2 years ago because there's less need for us today.
Okay, so over a 6-year period from 2008 to 2014, the bank's outstanding financial commitments nearly doubled, growing from $59 billion to $112 billion. This unprecedented growth has been attributed largely to financial crisis and resulting as a retreat of the private sector lending from that market. I have a problem. I have a problem with that. I think the biggest problem that we have with XM Bank is not listening to Congress, not implementing the reforms that it has said that it would implement. And, you know, I'd like to talk about something else before we move on, before I lose my time. But advocates for the bank like to point out that the bank is needed to counter foreign competition. That is to say that foreign ECAs, counter foreign ECAs, thereby leveling the playing field for U.S. companies. Yet, according to the bank's own data, only about a third of the bank's activity is characterized as countering foreign competition. So does that mean that 2/3 aren't to counter foreign competition?
No, the other 2/3 are filling in the gap when the private sector won't make the loan.
Okay.
For example, in sub-Saharan Africa, there are very few private banks that will do it without a loan. That's why we have such a large portfolio in sub-Saharan Africa.
Okay, so again, I'm having a really hard time here. The biggest problem, when everybody asks me what is the biggest surprise are these pretty much entities like this that aren't accountable to Congress. They don't keep promises that they make, and then they come back and they say, yes, we need your reauthorization. We understand that we're in trouble. We understand that there's, you know, all sorts of fraud going on, but, you know, we need you to trust us. When do we get to the point where we trust the American people again?
We have complied with every
single
requirement that this committee has asked us to do, and I enumerated that on the committee hearing 2 weeks ago.
All right. So here's what I'm saying. I just got a text from my 15-year-old. She's got 8 classes that she's taking right now, 7 A's and 1 C. And right after that text that she sent me, she said, Mom, by the way, don't worry, I'm getting that C up. It'll be done by the end of the year. I'm making up this paper, I'm making up this paper, and this is the plan, and I'll have straight A's. Great. there's a plan from a 15-year-old. I think we can do a better job in making sure that we're showing a clear plan on how we're going to limit our footprint and allow the private sector to become more involved in what we're doing here. Thank you. I yield back the remainder of my time.
The gentlelady's time has expired, and